Before we get started, I actually want to give a special thanks and shout out to everyone at The Great IT Professional for hosting today's talk and also providing free PDUs for anyone that is PMI certified. What we will cover today are these two things. Discuss why product discovery matters in today's post-COVID-19 economy, and also talk about the 3 steps for conducting better product discovery. There will also be a Q&A portion after the end of today's discussion, so be sure to submit your questions using the Q&A, and also you can share information via the chat. Just make sure that you're sharing to everyone via the chat, or you can also type in your questions using the Q&A window. So today's discussion is going to be discussing specifically, and also I'm going to be covering some tools that are typical visual tools that are fairly new. These are 21st century tools because they were published this century that actually helps you in implementing better product discovery efforts. And some of these tools that I'm going to be talking about, they're available through what I call the Product Discovery Toolkit. If you're interested in getting a copy of that, and also getting a copy of today's video recording and view of the slides, you can get a link with that, and all you need to do is connect with me on LinkedIn and just let me know that you were attending today's discussion here, and then I will send you a link after today's live session. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about the current situation and why product discovery all of a sudden is a huge, important effort for most organizations. First of all, there's been agile methods that have been implemented, and since the turn of the century, many organizations, specifically technology and software organizations, have implemented agile development methodologies within their organization. And it has actually turned both project management and product management sort of on its head, because even though both roles have existed for a long time, now you have to implement agile methodologies. And the reason for that is because post-COVID-19, now we're seeing all of these issues that are sort of like stunting growth within organizations. You're seeing things like delayed or lost sales revenue, specifically after we start being in person, and also canceled orders or lost customers because they actually now have a completely different paradigm than before. And it's really hard to anticipate changing customer needs and behavior, and also changing dynamics as to how we interact with either clients or customers. And it will entail disrupted product launches, as well as delayed product milestones and reduced team capacity, in addition to perhaps remote collaboration now, because we're all either working remotely or working from home, even now as we're trying to get back into the next normal. And if you look at the polls, most everyone right now, workforce is divided. We have 5 different generations in the workforce, and they all want to behave slightly different and not necessarily want to go back into the office 100% like we were before COVID-19. And that's going to continue being a challenge, a more permanent change moving forward that organizations need to deal with. And of course, supply chain disruptions and a changing competitive landscape, couple that with an increase in global tensions and high inflation. Not a very good formula for most organizations, because all of these are factors that will stunt growth, meaning growth in revenue or even continuing of their profitability business models. And so what we're finding is that these are all challenges that impact both project managers and product managers within organization, not just in 2021, but many of them are remaining through the rest of this year and beyond. And we have to have methodologies and teams prepared to deal with any combination of these issues that you may be facing today that you were not facing prior to COVID-19. And all of this actually it's better that you accelerate your agile methodologies across everything you do in the business. It's the right conditions because you have a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. And often when you don't know what you don't know, you need to have lots of things that you do to explore at the same time that you're exploiting what is working correctly within your business. But exploration is not just a nice to have, it is a must, and you must do both right. Explore and exploit in order to move your entire organization forward. And part of this is that also you want to make sure that you take advantage of Agile. Any studies that you've seen, any reputable studies will tell you that Agile methodologies will lead to higher cost reductions. It'll allow you to deliver higher value quicker, and also increase productivity and the quality, as well as get better satisfaction from deliver much better customer satisfaction than before. And that translates into higher business value because now you're getting higher return on investments. And of course, this is where product discovery is all about, is figuring out what is a new product or a new product line that you can introduce that will deliver a different value, anticipating or honing in on shifting buyer behavior and customer needs. And many of this will lead to new products and new product lines that you don't have today within your organization. So it's all about understanding what is the right product to bring to market at the right time for the right customers. And having said that, it's easier said than done when a lot of these things are moving parts that you don't control. You just have to understand them, anticipate them in the market so that you can be at the right time, at the right place, at the right time with the right product to sell and actually gain over your competition. So what are some of the challenges that you see in most organizations today that are doing product discovery? Well, they want to be able to increase the product to market fit. They want to be able to improve the customer experience even as their behavior is shifting. They want to be able to anticipate customer needs and buyer behavior, and also increase perceived customer value. And also in some cases, acquire new customers, not just retain the current customers, but acquire new customer segments that are rising. These are all things that you need to attack, in many cases, multiple things, not just one of these 5 things, multiple things that you want to do through your product discovery challenges. And much of this requires a lot of exploration before you find things that work. And so discovery is about figuring out how to fail fast, fail forward, so that you can learn and figure out from there, how are you going to actually deliver higher business value at some point once you are ready to introduce a new product to market. And it's a very iterative process that we're going to be discussing. So the attributes of product discovery is that you're going to get all 5 of these things combined. Be able to incorporate new technologies faster into your product, be able to get greater customer and selling value, deliver that on time, and have a design-driven customer experience that you can build into your product and then align to your business strategies, and then get much better understanding of customer needs and how quickly they're shifting, and figuring out from there how you can anticipate them before everybody else also follows. And so there's a lot of learning. And often, one of the challenges is that very early on, when you're in the concept stage, how do you determine whether what you have is a good idea versus a bad idea? Most organizations tend to think that ideas are failed very early on, and that's their fault because they don't explore. They just will shut down a lot of the ideas, and they don't really have any clear criteria as to whether that idea is a good idea or bad idea, because in the concept stage, all ideas look very much the same. And often you need to do more work to validate those ideas and actually start applying them to a business and what's happening in the market before you can figure out whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So you want to have a product discovery process that allows you to test ideas and then start separating good ideas from bad ideas over time. And that means that you have to have a process for doing that. I mentioned also earlier that there's a difference between searching and growing. Exploiting is about growing the business and getting more and more customers, and growing and diversifying your customer base and expanding markets. And you want to be able to do that as fast as you can once you know that your product has value that the market wants. But often trying to get to a product that delivers the right value at the right time requires a lot of exploration. So if you're reinvesting the majority of your revenue in your business at exploiting, and you don't do enough exploration, that is a problem, because in moving forward, organizations that are going to remain viable in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to need to do both exploration and exploitation at the same time. And that means that if you are not doing enough exploration, you need to do more of that. And product discovery is part of exploration. And you may have missing processes today, or you may be doing processes that are not really giving you what you should be doing, because you're trying to apply processes that work during exploitation, and you're trying to apply those during exploration. And guess what? They're not going to work. You need significantly different processes to explore than you need to exploit. And this is where most typical CEOs will miss, because a typical CEO prior to COVID-19, they spend the 90% of everything that they reinvest in their company in exploiting, and not enough in exploration. An entrepreneurial CEO, one that is either in charge of a startup that very quickly scales, or a company that becomes the next multi-billion dollar or the next Amazon.com, they actually do a lot more exploration. So typically around 40% exploration, 60% exploitation. And that's what you need to do in order to move forward in the business, no matter what industry you're in, especially if you want to make your organization much more resilient so that you can bounce back to where you were before COVID-19. And realize that also business models, just like yogurt, they have an expiration date. What used to work 2 years ago may no longer be working today. And that means that it's not just about reinventing products, it's also about reinventing your business model today, because now you have a lot more competitors saying, me too, we do that too. And now you need to find a new way to do business and actually leverage whatever value you're delivering to the market and translate that into business value. And often means that you need to rethink or reinvent your current business model. And that's all part of product discovery as well. So here's what Marty Kagan, who's an author of Inspire How to Create Products Customers Love, says about product exploration. The whole purpose of product discovery is that you want to quickly separate a good idea from a bad idea, and have a process with which you're actually filtering bad ideas from good ideas and validating those good ideas against the market. And that the output is a validated product backlog. Now, a product backlog is not a working product. It's not even a minimum viable product, because nothing has been designed, zero development has been done. And that's exactly everything that I'm going to be talking about today in product discovery has nothing to do. This is all the things that you do before you begin any design and development. And the fallacy of that is that we're actually going to be applying design thinking, guidelines and rules and methodologies to the product discovery process. A 3-step approach that I'm going to be discussing will use design thinking even before a product is being designed. It's actually about designing who and understanding who the customer is, number one, and why would they even consider buying your proposed solution to their problem. And understanding all those things are critical in getting it right during product discovery, because everything that will follow after that means that you're bound to go in the wrong direction to begin with if you already have started designing development. So product discovery is about choosing the right business model in addition to building for the right customers, the right solution for those customers. And it's about answering 4 critical questions. Number 1, why would people want to buy your product? Number 2, why would you want to, can they figure out how to use it without any instructions or without any training? And can your people build it the right way? And can the stakeholders, your stakeholders, whether they're your executives or shareholders or owners of the company and managers, will they see the value? Is that going to deliver enough business value for them to see the value for the business itself? These are all 4 questions that need to be answered before you exit a product discovery process. And so product discovery precedes design and development, as I mentioned about. This is you're doing very early on, and you're dealing with concepts, ideas, design details, zero design otherwise. And after that, you're going to be moving that into product design once you have a finalized product backlog that now you can actually turn on and implement over multiple iterations or sprints if you already have agile development processes going on, and move on to product design. And then finally, you're moving on to delivery of that product once you launch it into market. So we're going to be focusing today on specifically product discovery, which is just looking at the conceive and the planning phase before design and development is done. And you can actually have an agile approach to this that allows you to quickly plan what you're going to do, develop a way to validate and test concepts and ideas, test those ideas and validate them against the market, and then come back and do lessons learned. And you can do that again until you can end up with a minimum viable concept, not a product, a concept of what the solution should entail, and understanding three critical things that we're going to be discussing today. So you can still apply the typical agile process in product discovery. And you can repurpose many of the tools, but some of the tools that we're going to be using are specifically for product discovery, and that's what we'll be covering today. And here, the first thing you're doing in product discovery is understanding who are the right customer segments, and then move on to validating those customer segments, even when you are in the concept stage of your product. And often it's about doing this and validating so you can figure out how to pivot your business model before you even begin design and development. Because the characteristics of a lovable product, once it's done, is that it's got to have a business model that is feasible, desirable, delivers the right value to the target customers, and is also viable, meaning that it's not just about creating revenue, it's about also getting higher profitability, delivering higher profitability to your organization, especially if you're a commercial company. This is the case. And if you are a nonprofit or you're in a government agency, it's about delivering much more value and making sure that that value is you're measuring perceived value to your stakeholders, your beneficiaries or customers or the people that you're servicing, in order for this to be a viable and feasible business model for your organization, so that you know that there's high efficiency of how the funds going into your nonprofit or federal agency are being delivered to the beneficiaries and the stakeholders that are your customers, your users. So the three-step approach we're going to be discussing is as follows. It's about, number one, finding the right problem and understanding that you're working on solving the right problem first. Then you move on to finding the right solution for that problem that you found. Make sure that it's a market problem that you're trying to solve. And then number three, ensure that you have the right business model that you need to have in order to deliver the business value that you're promising after you design and build and launch the product and deliver it to customers. These are the three things that are part of this. And the framework that I'm talking about is this double diamond approach that allows you to, number one, on the left-hand side, it's all about finding the right market problem to solve first. And moving past that to the right-hand side, finding the right solution to that problem. And both entail and requires validation against the stakeholders who are going to be your end customers and end user types. And there may be more than one user type, depending on what your solution is. And then finally, moving on to finding the right business model. And of course, this double diamond approach requires iteration, because getting to all three and getting it right requires that you have to restart or go back to another step or two steps in order to, because you now have found things that you didn't know that you should have known. And before you move on to exit this product discovery phase, you need to iterate a few times before you actually can come out with the right problem, the right solution, and the right business model before you can begin design and development. So moving on, let's talk about this quote from Albert Einstein, because we're going to talk about the step number one, which is finding the right problem. Albert Einstein is credited with saying this particular quote: "If I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem first and then 5 minutes resolving it." Albert Einstein, through this quote, mentioned this is the criticality of making sure that you're working on understanding and defining and validating what is the right market problem to solve first. And you don't move past to a solution until you understand the right market problem to solve. And this is, by the way, one of the biggest faults of Agile teams today is that I find that when I work with companies that need help in figuring out, what's going on with their Agile processes, it's because they're jumping into solutions way too quickly and they don't validate enough the problem that they're trying to solve. And therefore, they don't understand who's going to see the value, who's going to be the buyer of this solution to this problem. Does it even exist? Is the market big enough? What is the price sensitivity of that market? And will they be able to monetize if they actually build that particular functionality or feature and add it to their product? And therefore, many software companies furiously implement and build a lot of new features. And guess what? Typically, less than 10% of all the features in any software product today, especially B2B products, are actually used by customers and their users. And that means that they spend a lot of time just building, and none of that delivers higher business value, or even increases the perceived value of their product to their users and customers. So you want to make sure you understand this before you move on to design and development, even when you have Agile development processes in your organization. So step one, finding the right problem entails all of these things. And it is really about understanding who are the buyers, who are the users, and what are the different segments of both. Because especially in B2B markets, you will have customer segments that is a combination of both buyers and user types, and they will vary industry by industry, market by market, and you need to understand what are their likes and dislikes and their preferences when they all have the same basic need. And understand the problem and make sure that it's clearly enunciated in a short statement so that everybody's clear as to what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And you need to validate it against the market. So in the problem space definition, you're answering all of these questions. What is the problem? Who are the users or customers facing that? How many people are facing it in the market? What are the demographics? What is their emotional behavior, their psychographic behavior? And how are they feeling and how are they dealing when they encounter the problem currently? Are there alternative solutions that they're trying to use that don't provide a full solution, provides them an incomplete solution? And what are the tools or features that your customers wish they would have today? And you can follow this 4-step problem definition process in the first half of this double diamond I spoke about earlier. That number one allows your team to establish the need for a solution, justify the need, validate it against the market, and contextualize this against in the market. And then finally, write a problem statement that should be clear. And here's an example. A problem statement is something like this. Blank allows you to, if you can use the chat and tell me which brand or product today, because this is an existing product, solves this particular problem today. There may be a couple or a few more because now you have a few vendors that do the same thing that solve this problem. So which vendor or brand or product allows you to store files in one place, access them from any device, regardless of where you are, as long as you have internet access, that you're able to transfer these files without the need to use a thumb drive or an external portable drive, which requires physical exchange of something before you can share those files with anyone. So if you can type in the chat, let me know what that is. And I see that a few of you have typed in some of you are saying Google Drive, some of you are saying other ones. And this is actually, yes, Dropbox, Box are the first two leaders. Google Drive was a follower in this market. They all do the same thing. They allow you to store securely files and then share them with anyone, whether they're workers, peers, family, friends, or anybody that you want to share information from any device that they have on their hand, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or a smartphone. Which brand or product solves this problem? This is a different problem. It allows you to now transfer and do nothing but transfer in a secure way up to 2 gigabytes in size of any file you want to share, because it could be a video. If you ever share a video, they can get pretty big, and you can just simply email that video as an attachment because it's way too big. So what are the solutions today or products that allow you to do file transfer in a secure way that doesn't have to require you to actually ship a thumb drive or an external portable drive to actually share that large file? And if you say it's very similar to Google Drive or OneDrive, yes, it has that aspect as a feature. But here's a product that it actually does nothing but that. It actually has a freemium model today, WeTransfer. It's a fairly new, and if you're familiar with an earlier brand called YouSendIt, this was the predecessor to YouSendIt. All they do is you go to a portal, you upload the file you want to share with someone, and it gives you a transfer link that has an expiration date of, I think by default, 5 days, but you can set it to any amount of time and share that link with someone. And if it's somebody downloads, it gives you a notification. And also, if it expires and no one downloads, it also gives you those notifications. WeTransfer is one of these newer products that is based on this concept of you want to be able to just simply transfer without having to pay for other features that are offered by Box or Dropbox or any of the other products that we mentioned earlier. So here's what you would do in case you want to actually have a problem statement. Here's a canvas, and this is a problem statement canvas. It's a visual tool that allows you to define seven different things that are about understanding the problem and who has it. It helps you define the entire problem space in one canvas. You can do this on a wall, you can do this on a whiteboard, or you can use this on a video conferencing application that allows teams to fill out every single one of these and actually really clearly understand all the things that you should know that is about defining the problem statement. And once you have this, now you need to validate it against the market. Here's an example of this. And if you read into this, you know that there's a product that already actually satisfies this. If you can tell me what is a product today that actually does this today, post-COVID-19, when everybody was working remotely, which is the number one application they turned on immediately when everybody had to be working, collaborating with colleagues remotely rather than being in person? And which one is the application that actually just became or gained a huge number of subscribers because it was already available before and everybody turned it on because it was free? So just a hint on that, and you can share what you believe. Who's the brand or product that actually does this right today? Let me know. It may be one of the tools that you're using today as you're still working remotely with colleagues and peers. Here's the sample statement that comes out of that using that canvas. So you have a 2-paragraph statement that defines the problem, who has it, and what happens, and what is the level of frustration or pain points and the gains that they perceive, and it has nothing to do with the solution. It only simply states and defines the problem, and you're validating, because quantifying these things is what you're getting when you're socializing this with the people that have the problem, experiencing the problem. So here's an example of the Airbnb business model. And the Airbnb business model is actually one that actually solves a problem that was actually there before, and they actually became a company that in less than 5 years, they actually scaled globally. When they were in a startup mode out of San Francisco for about 3 to 5 years, when they actually deployed their brand, they went global. And today, Airbnb owns no real estate, but they're actually one of the largest vendors of rooms around the world, because you can actually either rent a property or a room around the world. And they're now competing with companies like Hilton and Marriott. And this is the business model for Airbnb. We're going to talk about more about that. But here's what happened. Prior to COVID-19, Airbnb offered prospective guests an amenity of properties that you can rent either by the room or the entire property around the world. And you can get that on the palm of your hand via a mobile application or a web application that was available for you to book properties as you were planning your next trip. And that was going on. But also what they started developing is providing more of an experience, because now you can not only, if you were going to a destination that was really for tourism or some purpose that was either business or leisure travel, you could actually book additional things. Like you can actually find photographers on location that will help you document or take pictures of your event, whatever that event was going to be, whether it was a celebration or a conference or summit. You could get local vendors as well available. Was expanding the services that that existed. Well, post COVID-19, when everything was shut down, that was all about getting the information that was about expanding the business. So the first thing that Airbnb, as this was the entire hospitality industry around the world was hit at depression levels, because no one was traveling anymore. No one was traveling for business. No one was traveling for leisure. And many people were canceling all their trips that they had already booked in 2020 and 2021. And what Airbnb did is they first of all ended up securing additional funding so they could operate for a few years and pivot their business model. And they accelerated something that they had been exploring, which is providing a much total delivering experiences, and not just in-person experiences, but actually delivering virtual experiences so that you didn't have to travel. And what they did is they actually partnered with activity producers and tour guides and photographers. And now you could buy virtual experiences that didn't require any travel. So if you wanted to go and see the Louvre in Paris and you couldn't be flying to Paris, you could actually book a virtual live online demo or showcasing of the different floors of the Louvre Museum in Paris without having to travel, and you could just buy that experience online. So as opposed to booking more in-person travel, they actually started enabling booking virtual experiences, partnering with producers and tour guides and photographers to actually set up virtual tours of places that were the best places around. So between that and also the need for many of us, even as we were starting to open up the economy in 2020, 2021, they also opened up more travel destinations to very specific locations next to national parks in US, because they knew that in 2019 it was a record year with many of us that had never, that was what we were doing before COVID-19. More and more people, and a record number of people, were visiting national parks because there's much more awareness that national parks may be here today and may be gone tomorrow because of climate change. And they're actually went back and started offering better experiences at very specific locations. There was a niche market for people who still wanted to do some limited traveling in 2021 to national parks. And between that, Airbnb is doing quite well, because they didn't do this just in US. They did this market by market. They looked at destinations and created virtual experiences in combination with much better in-person experiences. And you can book any of these experiences on the Airbnb application. And that created new business, new revenue streams for Airbnb, and they're pretty much on the way to recovery in 2022. And it was all a reinventing and pivoting of their business model. Step number 2, finding the right solution. I spoke about step number 1, which is about the problem. Once you understand it, you have validated it, you have reframed the problem. All these things happen in that step 1 as you're iterating, validating, and coming up with adding more to your problem statement and quantifying your problem statement. Now you have the right solution, and you can move to designing the right solution. And the right solution is about having an idea of what the product would look like. Your solution is a product. What is it going to look like? How would you package it? And how are you going to, what is the unique value proposition that it would deliver to those buyers and users? And what are the things that need to be done in the next 3 to 5 years if you decide that you are going to implement something, launch it, and then what are you going to be working on next? All of these things are part of that, and you can actually start creating a backlog and not committing it for development, but just adding more cards to your backlog. And that's exactly what you're doing when you're actually looking at discovering the right solution. Means that you need to reprioritize your current stories, add more stories to your backlog, and that's clearly what you're doing. And at some point, that backlog will become your pitch deck so that you can actually present this to your executives or your shareholders or investors. And going from a product backlog to perhaps a product requirements document that is now 80% complete, as opposed to having to start from scratch once you have decided that you are going to start designing development. So you're working on the backlog and your product requirements document before you begin design and development. And in the solution space, these are all the questions that you need to answer before you move on past. So you ensure that you have clarity as to what is the right solution to bring to market and what is going to be that minimum viable product and the features and functionality that it needs to support. And the unique value proposition is how you can actually start designing that first, because you don't have to have a product. All you have to do is have a story as to what is that unique value that no one else, no other competitor in the market is delivering today to those prospective target customers. And you're leveraging everything that are about your current collaborators, suppliers and partners, distribution channels, or maybe even identify new ones that are in your market that you can turn on in order to deliver that unique value proposition. And sometimes you might need to do any combination of those, is turn on new collaborators and not just use your current ones. And it also allows you to empathize with customers, because once you start socializing this unique value proposition against your target customers to validate that unique value, you will get feedback regarding other things that allow you to start including into the way you package your product, and also have clarity as to what your business model should be. What are they going to buy? What price points do they buy at? Why are they buying? And how often? These are all things that you need that will help you not only package your product and price it the right way before you begin designing development, that allows you to now control your cost structure associated with creating that product, because now you can start forecasting revenue. You can also start developing and getting a better idea of what is the right business model that you need to implement by just testing your unique value proposition. And sometimes you might need to have a message platform as well. So not only you're testing your unique value proposition, you're also testing the unique selling proposition and your positioning statement, especially if you are going into a competitive market, meaning there's already some level of competition. You need to have a positioning statement that gives you a unique position in the market that you're about to enter. And none of this is about the product, it's about what your brand represents, what value you want to deliver, and what you want to associate, and that you need to associate in the way you market your product, so that you can have the right position once you are delivering the product into market. And all of these things, you can actually use a value proposition canvas. This is what this tool is, and it's part of this toolkit that I mentioned earlier. The value proposition canvas was developed this century, and it's a brand new visual tool. And this is what I train the teams that I work with on using to actually ensure that you have the right value proposition, and then ensure that it's a unique value proposition that you're about to deliver to those customers and users. And it gives you clarity as to what are the gains that they're looking for, what are the pain points that they have, and what is the level of pain that they're feeling, and identify the jobs to be done from the customer and user's point of view, so that you can now define and package your product to solve and include the right gain creators, the right pain relievers, and the right things that solve or make it easier for your users and buyers to get their job done. Here's an example of the 3 things that I spoke about for Whole Foods: a unique value proposition for Whole Foods, a unique selling proposition for Whole Foods, and the positioning statement for Whole Foods. And these are all things that they use to market whatever they have to offer at any store that you can walk into around North America. And of course, Whole Foods now is actually owned by Amazon, and so they're part of the Amazon family. Step number 3, finding the right business model. Finally, once you uncover or start doing enough iteration across steps 1 and 2, you also will start to go into step number 3, which is, how is it that you're going to make money from this product? If you imagine that you have the product already ready to go and be delivered today, how are you going to sell it? Where are you going to sell it? How often do you have to promote it? And how are you going to price it to begin with? And what are the cost structures associated with marketing and sales and managing distribution channels, if that's something that you need to have, indirect distribution channels, in addition to managing your own sales force to sell the product? These are all things that are part of understanding, having clarity as to whether your business model is going to be, you're offering something that is highly desirable to your customers, is going to be feasible for you to produce and deliver, and whether it's going to be viable and has a chance of becoming profitable at some point once you increase the sales volume. Understanding all of this means that you have to use now a new tool to answer these questions that clearly allows everyone within the organization to have clarity as to how you're going to make money from this product before you begin developing the product. And you can use the business model canvas, which I spoke about earlier when I introduced the concept of Airbnb. This is the canvas that allows you to have clarity as to what is the value proposition and what are the things that you need to have in order to ensure that whatever value you're offering is highly desirable. By whom? By your customer segments. Who are they? Where are they? How are you going to identify them in your market? And ensure that it's feasible, meaning that you can actually have the right resources, the right capabilities, the right capacity, the right partners and suppliers in order to ensure you can not only design and develop it, but manufacture it or scale the production and delivery of that once you begin capturing buyers. And then finally, that is viable, meaning that not only are you going to have revenue, but your cost structures are being managed to keep them as low as possible over time, so that a large sales volume will equate to profitability at some point, and that you can at least forecast how soon before you can reach that break-even point when when the product now becomes profitable by itself over time. So one of the questions I had was a problem statement about, an application that overnight just gained millions of users overnight in 2020, and that is Zoom. Because Zoom is the #1 tool that was adopted first by everyone who all of a sudden overnight had to work remotely with peers and their teams. And Zoom already was a solution that was available. It was already the leader in video conferencing applications prior to COVID-19, and it just gained incredibly a lot of value as a public company in 2020. Here's what happened in 2020. between March and the end of 2020, they gained more than 300 million subscribers around the world. It was the #1 most downloaded application around the world. And look at their valuation. As a public company, their valuation skyrocketed and reached a peak of just over $48 billion in 2020. They lost some of that, but they're still higher valuation than most airlines today as a video conferencing application. As a result, everybody who was a fast follower like Microsoft with their Teams solution followed, but Zoom is still #1 and kept a lot of the value that they gained in 2020 almost overnight. And that was because they had the right solution at the right time and simply made it very easy for people to use and make it very usable, easy to use. If you compare Zoom today to Teams, it is a much better, easy to use application, very quick to adopt. You can very quickly start using it for free. And then if you need to use it more, then you start paying for a plan. And they give an assortment of plans that you can turn on based on the way you use. And that includes, Zoom is today #1 compared to anybody else, including any other video conferencing application that were legacy applications. And if you look at today, the two biggest winners in the post-COVID-19 economy, when most of us are still working remotely, Zoom in combination with Slack are the clear applications that are winners. And Teams, along with Office 365 for Microsoft, are the other two winners of whatever we're using. You're either using Zoom in combination with Slack today, or you're using Teams and Office 365, or you're using all of these at the same time within your organization. That's what happened in most organizations post-COVID-19. So going back and summarizing, 3 steps: finding the right problem, figuring out in that discovery and exploration and growth process, what is the right problem and what is the right solution to begin building before you move into design and development. That is what product discovery is all about. And that you need to go a step further, and that is understanding clearly what is the right business model to use to introduce that product that you're about to deliver and launch into market, and make sure you have all of those things that you need in place. So by the time that you're ready to launch the product, you're really able to deliver and scale the delivery of that product and make a lot of money as you do so. Even if you have a freemium model like Zoom, you can still gain a lot of business value if you do this right. Before we wrap up, if you're interested in getting more information about how to become a better product manager, or you want to shift your career into product management, you can actually start looking at some of the live online courses that we're offering to Bold PM Academy. And if you're interested in learning more about what we do, or even you may be interested in shifting your career as a manager today or a leader into product management, reach out to me, because I can help you individually. Or if you have a team that you need for them to get better at doing product discovery, and you need them to get trained and coached, reach out to me. And here's my contact information. You can reach out to me either via email or connect with me via LinkedIn. Thanks everyone for attending. And you can also download a free copy of your toolkit. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll get information as to how you can do that. Get a link where you can actually download a free copy of the product discovery toolkit I spoke about earlier.
Great. Well, thank you, Hector. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.